You could have a wildfire burn through and destroy the top tree. Destroy all of the olive. And that mother root, if it's still there, is going to grow brand new shoots that replace the old. Welcome back. You know, the first 4 or 5 bumps in that song I wrote years ago. I'm just performing it now for the first time for you all as an audience. The first 4 or 5 of those it's strange, it's foreign. But then once you get to number 6 or 7, you don't want to stop. At least that's what I just noticed when performing. Did you know the word entertain? The root of the word entertain is to maintain presence. I think about that every once in a while when I kick off an episode with some deliberate act to hook in the attention through some, pattern interrupt of what you'd expect I'd start with. And then I get sucked into that. It's maintaining my presence in whatever attempt I make at entertaining you. I guess it's okay to get lost in the medium. Today's reflection, like so often is the case with an intro and the topic, is so tightly related because we're talking olive trees today. You know, olive trees can grow to last for thousands of years. There are olive trees right now in the world that are 3,500 years old, 3,500 years old. That means that there are trees in Greece that by the time Socrates was philosophizing, that tree was already 1,000 years old. And what's unique about these trees is that the root systems, called the mother root, can grow up new shoots. If anything happens to the tree that you and I would look at and say, well, that's the olive tree. That's just the shoots coming up from the mother root that if that gets burned, chopped down, the root system will just sprout new shoots. You see, we think the tree is what's above the ground, that's the thing. The roots are not only invisible, but they're secondary. In some way, we recognize, okay, the roots are needed. It's what gives it food and brings its nutrition to the different parts of the tree, but it's certainly not the value of the tree, because the value of the tree, well, if you're growing olives, is in the olives to the layperson, to the one that assumes the fruit is where the value is. But to the veteran olive grower, to the one that knows the real system at work, they know that all of the value comes from the roots. The roots, specifically with olive trees, can determine its disease resistance, can determine the uptake of the nutrition in the soil. Amazing and powerful mother roots are sought after because they get the most out of the soil. They produce the most disease-resistant types of trees. And you can actually transplant by taking part of the mother root, put it into a different part, and grow a very disease-resistant, strong set of olive trees from that mother root. But like I said, what's really fascinating about this is you could have a wildfire burn through and destroy the top tree. Destroy all of the olives. And that mother root, if it's still there, is going to grow brand new shoots that replace the old. In fact, any tree that we're looking at that we say is 2,000 years old, 500 years old, 3,000 years old, what we're really looking at and pointing to is its current incarnation. The roots have been there for thousands of years. But that current incarnation that we're looking at the current incarnation that we're getting olives from, it might be 100 years old. Similarly, we think that the value, so many things that we chase are in the fruits, the success that we go after that maps to, well, this person was on the cover of a magazine because they did this, so I'm going to do that too. This person is applauded because they wrote this best-selling book, so I'm going to chase that too. This person is applauded because, wow, they've got 4 amazing kids. They must be doing it right. And we get caught up in what do they do during the day? How do they run a meeting? I know in Silicon Valley, we would get so caught up in blog posts on how to run a meeting, how to manage an executive team, how to build out a product development process, how to prototype products, and looking at all of these logistics. And it would be like looking up, how do you pick up the olives from the tree? How do you pick the fruit? How do you wash the fruit? How do you sell the fruit for the most money at the farmer's market? It was rarely ever discussed how a great leader would manage everything in between the ears. It's rarely discussed how a great leader or manager would think about the world, would study, reflect, orient themselves to their company or humanity at large. Steve Jobs is known for things like, you got to find any one of your songs within 3 clicks. He's known for pulling a razor-thin computer out of a manila envelope. He's known for catchphrases like, and one more thing. He's known for building one of the most valuable companies of all time. Very few, 1 in 100, know the fact that he was a devotee of Neem Karoli Baba, that loved to read and listen to Ram Dass, that handed out autobiography of a yogi at his wake. He had a guru in Japan that he would go visit. In fact, before jumping back in to take over the helm at Apple when they had about 6 weeks of cash left. And he would end up saving the company, introducing the iMac, and then a few years later, the iPod, then the iPhone. While he was deliberating whether he should do that or not, he went to go see his guru in Japan. And he told the guru, I feel like I should quit what I'm doing in the professional world, because he was running Pixar. I have this Apple thing. But, I was fired from that company a little over a decade ago, from the company that he started. And he wanted to make noodles. I'm not making this up. That's what he felt like. His calling was to make noodles. And I'm sure it's so much deeper than that. That in itself is the fruits. In Zen, it's very much part of the philosophical practice to discover and learn the philosophy of Zen while doing something else. Archery, flower arranging, making noodles, pottery, art. But mapping philosophy to action. And that was the fork in the road that he was trying to decide between. And ultimately his guru said, no, you should go and run Apple. But 1 in 100 know or care about things like that, the roots of the individuals that we all hear about, study, admire. We rarely go to the roots. We look at the current incarnation and we try to imitate that. And part of my discovery of this philosophy of Advaita Vedanta is, part of that discovery was recognizing that a lot of my favorite thinkers throughout history, from Emerson, Thoreau, Aldous Huxley, Carl Jung, Schopenhauer, Joseph Campbell, Alan Watts, Ram Dass, studied this philosophy. I know a lot of people that are obsessed with Joseph Campbell, the 20th century mythologist that is famous for The Hero's Journey, and famous for a book called Hero with 1,000 Faces. But at the root of the hero's journey, at the root of his life, the foundation, the mother root upon which all of these discoveries and similarities between all of these heroic journeys and narrative arcs comes from not just his study of this philosophy, but that the hero's journey is the journey within this philosophy. The hero's journey is self-discovery. The hero's journey is going from a peaceful, stable home to something that causes instability, war, famine, destruction, some tragedy that catapults the hero out into the world, into their adventure. That hero oftentimes thinks that they're going to right some wrong, maybe vengeance, maybe it's to seek treasure, maybe it's to go find some cure, maybe it's to go get some help, to right the wrong in the beginning and restabilize things. And it's through that arc that the hero eventually gets to the end, and what they get at the end of the rainbow is not treasure, but it's wisdom. It's self-discovery, self-mastery that then leads to stability, to whatever they bring back to their community. This is the story of Star Wars, of Harry Potter. This is the story of the superhero movies where you have this reluctant hero that's given these powers or discovers these powers and is on this arc of restoring stability through their discovery. Much more about discovery than it is about pursuit or power. The pursuit hits its destination because of that discovery. The use of that power is wielded because of that self-mastery. And all of these stories, not just Joseph Campbell's in the real world, but all of these stories are the Vedantic story. Luke Skywalker thinking he is this tiny little speck flung way out in left field of the universe, comes to understand he is the missing piece to restore order. The reason these stories resonate with us is because deep down, it speaks to who we are. That's because this philosophy says you are that which is. Not the you that you think you are, that we think we are. Not the egoistic version, that's megalomania. But you who you really are, independent of your current incarnation, the current personality, career, identifications that you use, who you really are. The source of who you really are. The mother root. The mother of all mother roots. The source from which all of this springs forth. This philosophy says is who you truly are. And it is a wild adventure of unparalleled proportions to bit by bit discover who we are. It's not in the fruits that we're pursuing. It's not in the fruits of others that we're imitating. It's not in the branches, who we pretend to be, who we go around telling people we are, but deep down in the roots, in the absolute sense, the roots, who we really are, from which all of our personality, who we think we are, comes from, is not only, according to this philosophy, divine, supreme, one, non-dual, but from the relative perspective, all of the fruit that we will ever bear comes from how we root ourselves, the foundation to our worldview, the foundation to how we view others, the relationship we have with others, with our work, with discomfort. This is all work at the root level that at least this philosophy tells us to do every morning, ideally before the sun comes up, doing the study and reflection to root ourselves in the relative side. And that rooting, every branch and every fruit, the quality of those comes from how intentional we root ourselves on a daily basis to something, ideally, to something higher than ourselves. You could root yourself with poetry. You could root yourself with reflection on experience. You could root yourself with stillness. Ideally, it's rooting ourselves to the higher, to something beyond selfish desire. That's the ideal. This philosophy, say studying something like Vedanta treatise, 2 to 3 pages each morning, would be a phenomenal way to root oneself. Or if you feel called, reading the Gospels, reading Augustine, reading the Quran. All of these are powerful ways to root ourselves to the timeless, to the higher. And why is that important? It's because every fruit we bear or every branch we spring forth comes down to the roots that we've grown. It's a vivid and powerful visual to imagine the olive tree deriving its value from the system of roots that we don't even see, and powerfully symbolic to both the absolute, what this philosophy says, as well as the practical, the relative, of any pursuit we ever attempt, to focus not on the branches, the leaves, or the fruit, but to focus on what is beneath it all, and then let the rest take care of itself. That is today's reflection on the Daily Vedantic. We'll see you next time.